Hello, welcome to the Monday edition of the 14. I'm Chris Lee. Barry Allen joins me. The College World Series has been underway for 2 days. We're going to talk about all three games that have involved Southeastern Conference teams so far. But first, Barry Allen, news or maybe no news in the LSU coaching search, depending however you'd like to phrase it. But Mike Bianco, who we thought last week was heading to Baton Rouge, is not. He has signed an extension at Ole Miss. And what I think threw everybody a curveball and just prolongs a coaching search that has already gotten a ton of national attention.
Yeah, last night it broke that Mike has signed an extension with Ole Miss. By state laws there, state employees can only have a 4-year contract. So now he is at the maximum 4 years at Ole Miss and will remain as their head coach. At least through the duration of now this contract, and so that eliminates him from the coaching search at LSU. I think Keith Carter wanted to get that done, and I think it sounded like in reading some things during the week last week that he was a little. I think Keith was a little miffed at things that were being reported that he knew that weren't true, and apparently, he wanted to get that done pretty quickly, and he and Mike came to terms yesterday, and they were able to lock him up for 4 more years at Ole Miss, and I think that's good for Mike. I think that's good for Ole Miss, and he's had 21 good years, and I think that will continue. I know their fan base wants to break through and go to Omaha, and they've had a lot of really good teams that's lost in super regionals, but there are a lot of teams wishes they could go to super regionals. A lot of teams just wish they could get in the tournament and in this league too. So I think it's been a dominant period for him, and hopefully good and better things will happen for Ole Miss with Mike Bianco still in control.
Well, the reports were yesterday that LSU's athletic director spent his time in Omaha. I would presume, we don't know if that means he's looking at coaches still in the field, which I think is almost certainly a case. I mean, Tony Vitello's name has come up in that search. Tim Corbin's name has come in that search. So has Jay Johnson as Arizona. Of course, he could also be interviewing guys who aren't playing. We really just don't know at this point. But, I mean, the strategy there for a long time has seemed to be that they are swinging for the fences. They did that with the women's basketball hire, and I would presume that's what they're doing here again.
I would think they would have to. Their fan base wouldn't settle for anything less, and they may not be, they may not get their first couple of choices, and that's where they are now. And I would think that Omaha would be the, kind of the hub of college baseball right now with the World Series going on. I know there are coaches that go out there and watch, and there are a lot of really good tournaments going on in Omaha this time of the year that are, kids that are recruitable kids. So there may be coaches that are out there maybe watching that. This may be a dead period. I know this weekend was dead because I saw a tweet from Kirk Sarloos thanking the NCAA for making Father's Day weekend a dead period. So it may be a dead period, but I know there's a lot of baseball going on in Omaha, in and around the College World Series, with a lot of youth teams and travel ball teams, playing. Because in my experience of going out there, there's all kinds of teams staying in these hotels, and they play, all day. So there may be coaches that are out there to watch. There may be coaches that are out there, waiting for the period to open back up so they can, start looking at kids. But you would kind of think the CWS is kind of like the Final Four in basketball, that everybody, has some kind of an appearance out there. I know the coaches. ABCA meets there and comes up with their All-American team, and there may be some coaches that are on that committee that Scott Woodward and LSU may be interested in, and we'll just kind of see what goes from there. But you would think that if they haven't gotten somebody by now, they're trying to do their due diligence, and they're also maybe looking at somebody that's still in Omaha, and there's 8 really good candidates out there and that are in Omaha. Some that I think would be good fits at LSU, some might not be. I don't think you're going to get David Esker out of Stanford, and I'm not sure they want him, but I think that's, he's a Stanford guy, and I think he's probably there, but there's some other guys that you may want to take a look at. And and they certainly are still playing in Omaha at this point. And as you mentioned, Tony Vitello's a hot name. Tim Corbin, certainly would be a name that I think LSU would be interested in, and maybe even Chris Lemonis. The job he's done at Mississippi State, although I think it'd be real hard to pry him away from Starkville with everything they have there. And his father went to school there and worked at Mississippi State for a long time and lives there now. I think that'd be kind of hard to pry him away from Starkville at this point. But I guess anything is still in play until they hire somebody. Everybody's name is still on the list.
Well, let's talk baseball. Let's go in order that the games that were played. Vanderbilt and Arizona played a really interesting game that lasted nearly 5 hours. The Commodores walk off Arizona on Jason Gonzalez's single through short, ending a game where both teams blew opportunities late to win it. And you didn't see the pitching out of Kumar Rocker that you thought you would, but Vanderbilt's bullpen really was terrific against an Arizona team that might be the best hitting club in the country. Boy, you got your money's worth if you stayed up and watched that one, Barry.
Yeah, you really did. And we talked about Friday, Kumar Rocker, we could see him going into the sixth inning, well over 100 pitches, and he did. And, he survived a shaky first inning where they scored 3 runs on 4 hits, took advantage of an error, up 3-0, but Vanderbilt answered right back with a run. And then he struck out the 8-hole hitter to end the first inning and then reels off 15 in a row. And you're thinking, well, here's Kumar again. And Gonzalez hits a 2-run homer and we're tied. And you think, well, here's what we thought we were going to get. And then we get a hit by pitch and a home run. And all of a sudden Vanderbilt's down 5-3 and Rocker's out of the game. And they turn the game over to the bullpen. And, of late, that's been kind of a question a little bit for them. But Maldonado, Murphy, and McIlvain, the 3 M's, were really good. Maldonado was really good, even though they gave up a run in the 9th inning. And, he and Murphy, combined to give up a run and let Arizona force extra innings. Both of those guys pitched really well. And I thought McIlvain, came in the 12th and gave up the double to lead off the inning and then left him standing on second base and gave Vanderbilt a chance to win. That's kind of the Vanderbilt team we expect to see with pitching and dominant pitching. And we got that out of their bullpen Saturday night in Omaha. I know Maldonado's had his issues, of late, struggled, the first game of the regional. I think he gave up the home run to Kentucky that lost the Eastern Division. He gave up home run in the SEC tournament, a home run in the regional, Georgia Tech. I'm thinking, span of 5 appearances, he gave up 4 home runs, including 3 in a row. And then he came back and had 2 scoreless outings in the tournament and got into the 9th inning with a chance to get a save and a scoreless outing Saturday night. So I think he was a big key in that game for Vanderbilt, winning that first game. And then, Murphy and McIlvain coming in and doing their job. But the bullpen was what we expected to see from Vanderbilt most of the season. And that's what we got Saturday night. And that's what enabled them to win the game.
Yeah, we talk, and so many people talk mostly about Rocker and Leiter, but Murphy and Maldonado have been about as good as those 2 guys. In fact, Maldonado has the best base runners allowed per innings pitch number on the staff, was really good, gave up a run, but otherwise was very good. I mean, holding Arizona to 1 run over 6 1/3 or whatever they did was phenomenal. I think that gets overlooked with Vanderbilt. You go to Murphy and Maldonado at the end of that game, and it'll be interesting to see if those guys are fresh and available for Monday because they threw 48 pitches respectively. But those 2, when they're on, which is more often than not, are about as good as what you get to start the game between Vandy's 2 aces also, Barry.
Yeah, and it will be interesting to see what their availability would be Monday night in the game against NC State. But, they've had the day off, and I think that helps a lot. So it'd be like pitching Friday and then coming back on Sunday in an SEC series, and I'm sure they've done that more than once. So that will be interesting to see what, and also how does Leiter handle the NC State lineup? Maybe he goes more than 5+. Maybe he gets 6 full or 7 full innings, and you only need those guys for an inning apiece. So Leiter can control that as well, and then you also, I'm assuming they're going to see Highfield on the mound tonight, and North Carolina State used one of their relievers pretty extensively on Saturday. So they have one other guy they can use, so and could bring him back in a shorter role. So maybe it's something that the Vanderbilt offense could do to, generate a little more offense and make it easier for Leiter and the bullpen in the game tonight against North Carolina State in the winners bracket game tonight. But I think Vanderbilt has to feel pretty good about where they are pitching wise going into the game.
NC State just flat out wears out right-handers at the top of that lineup, especially Johnny Butler. And we've got some stats at the 14. You can check them out for yourselves. We've broken down how this team hits right-handers, which, of course, Jack Leiter is a right-hander, unlike his father, Al. But I think that's going to be very interesting. The State, I'm not going to say easy outs the last couple spots in the lineup, but watching Leiter try to go through that lineup, you saw that was problematic for Rocker against Arizona to start the game. It'd be interesting because with Rocker and Leiter, both those kids, a lot of times struggle in the first inning before they get into a groove, and sometimes it's one bad inning that can sink you, and that's kind of the thing that I'll be watching tonight when those two teams play.
Yeah, it was one inning Saturday that sunk, Stanford. They had they picked their worst day to play bad, and they had 3 errors on defense and, struggled to get out of one inning, and Arizona put up a crooked number and ended up, taking advantage of them. They still struck out a lot in the game on Saturday. NC State did. Struck out 12 times, but they did have 3 doubles and 2 home runs out of their 12 hits that they had, and they're the only team that scored double-figure runs in the first round of the tournament. So, this offense we know can swing the bat. They scored 8 of their 11 runs at Arkansas off the home run, and they started the game, Saturday with a home run from Butler, and he's played really well in the postseason for them, or the NCAA tournament. Postseason is also ACC tournament, but the NCAA tournament. So this lineup will be very interesting for Leiter and Vanderbilt to see how they can navigate the Wolfpack tonight, a hot team. And I think, we'll probably touch on Virginia a little bit in a little bit, but I think you look at maybe at Virginia, North Carolina State were undervalued some going into the NCAA tournament. I mean, Notre Dame won the league and ran away with it, but maybe we overlooked Virginia and North Carolina State because both of those teams were very impressive in their first two in their games each in Omaha to start with, and they've been real impressive throughout the NCAA tournament. So maybe the two ACC teams are better than most people thought.
Yeah, I think that seems, I don't want to say obvious at this point, but maybe Virginia, well, both of these teams, really teams that are peaking. Sometimes you see teams that you look at the stats and the body of the work and you say, well, they don't stack up very well to the rest of the teams. But then you start breaking things down and you say, well, Virginia's got an ace. Well, that guy, Andrew Abbott, certainly showed up yesterday. And you look at some of the kids in that lineup, Kyle Teal, a freshman who really came on late. The Vols yesterday, frankly, Barry, I mean, I'm not shocked that Tennessee lost to Virginia because of Abbott, but my goodness, that was not what I expected at all. Tennessee struck out a ton, did not hit the ball with any authority, which we thought that might happen after the way the ball carried in that park on Monday. That just was not at all what I was expecting to see from Tennessee.
No, they only had 6 singles. This is a team that banged their way to the regional, or banged their way to Omaha through the regional and super regional with 16 home runs and only had 6 singles yesterday. And, had 3 chances to score runs in the game. They had leadoff walk and a single in the first inning and didn't score, didn't move a runner. Had 2 on in the 5th inning and didn't moved 1 runner over with sacrifice bunt. Didn't score any more runs after that, or didn't score any runs, and then had 2 on in the 6th inning. And I think that was the inning Virginia turned those 2 really spectacular plays, at second base. A line drive hit over the second baseman's head, and he made a leaping catch, and then a really good play up the middle by the shortstop to end the inning. Tennessee 0 for 8 with runners in scoring position. They were 0 for 4 with runners at third base and less than 2 outs. And, when you get an opportunity to score a run or 2 in the World Series against a really good pitcher, you got to do that, and they didn't. And, they had only 6 hits, all singles. They punched out 13 times in the game, and it was just a hard day for them. And then and then Dallas could not control their offense. It's 1-0, I think, going to the seventh, and then they bust the game open with 4 runs, and then add a run in the ninth inning, yesterday to knock Tennessee into the losers bracket. And I know we wrote about it on our site, but Logan Michaels, the catcher, big day for him. Hit his first home run of the season, had 3 hits yesterday, drove in 3 runs, and pretty special day for him and his family. His dad's battling pancreatic cancer, and Michaels had a Father's Day. The family had a Father's Day they'll never forget, with the effort that Logan put forth for Virginia yesterday. And I read an article later last night about it that his dad, the doctors told him he had 2% chance to live, and he's been over a year with it, and it's a tough battle. But it was great to see that yesterday. A real emotional day for their family, and a real emotional day for Virginia as they were able to get the first win in the College World Series, and like I said, a Father's Day that the Michaels family will certainly never forget.
Yeah, that was one that was difficult to watch without feeling some moist eyes on that one. I mean, a guy who thought his dad might not even be around at this point, and here he is, and he's the hero of Game 1 for the Cavaliers. But that was a game from a Tennessee standpoint just frustrating to watch. It seemed like balls found holes at the right time for NC State. That did not happen for Tennessee, which I think you mentioned left the bases, a couple of guys on in scoring position at times, and just Tennessee couldn't cash in. It really was just the opposite of what we saw out of Tennessee all year, Barry.
Yeah, they just didn't generate any offense, and it also just looked like that. They were manhandled by Abbott. I mean, and they've run into some really good arms all year long, and they've not looked like that. I don't know if it was the stage, big stage. Nobody thought we were going to be here, and I'm watching this game yesterday, and I'm thinking back to the press conference on Friday, and I don't remember which player it was for Tennessee. I think it was Evan Russell. Said, I grew up watching the College World Series, and you see Texas, Mississippi State, Virginia, and Vanderbilt, Miami, and these teams. And he goes, we just kind of slipped in here. And then when I watched the game yesterday, I kind of kept thinking back to that comment that he made Friday at the press conference that Tennessee just kind of slipped in here. They didn't really just slip in there. They've got a good team, but, this is a team that hadn't been there. And the stage might have been big. I mean, they might have been wide-eyed yesterday when they got they get in there and they see the crowd. I thought it might help them a little bit that 2 games would have been played on Saturday. I might have expected that a little bit more if they'd opened the World Series on Saturday at 1 rather than Sunday. But maybe the environment, was a little more than they expected, and they didn't get used to it. And they've got themselves now in an 0-1 hole, and unfortunately, they're going to have to try to stay alive Tuesday with an elimination game against Texas. But it just looked like Tennessee was, I don't want to say overwhelmed yesterday, but I think maybe the moment got caught up in the moment, and it just seemed to work better for Virginia, who has had to fight their way through. I mean, they won 6 straight elimination games, and Tennessee really and truly, other than the Wright State game, wasn't really tested. The other games were fairly easy wins for them because they were good. But Virginia's really had a tough battle, and maybe the atmosphere was not quite as overwhelming for Virginia as it was for Tennessee yesterday.
I'm looking back, and here's one thing I question that Tony Vitello did on Sunday. You got Luke Lipsius, who hits, and this is batting average, on base percentage, and slugging in order. Lipsius hits 100, 308, and 160 against lefties. Evan Russell hits 200, 345, and 289 against lefties. And yet Russell hits, 5th in that lineup, and Lipsius was 6th. Russell 0 for 4 with 2 strikeouts. Lipsius 0 for 4 with 4 strikeouts. Really, that is costly when you have 2 guys back-to-back who really can't put the ball in play, and sometimes that's what you need to generate runs, is just to get a ground ball to move runners over. That's one of those things I look back on, and in hindsight, Tennessee probably should have ordered that lineup perhaps a bit differently.
Yeah, maybe so. With the lefties the left on left matchups and some struggles that they had. But you also had Beck in the lineup that was 0 for 3 with 3 punch outs, and Liam Spence was 0 for 3 with 1 strikeout. And he's your leadoff guy. Although he drew a leadoff walk, he didn't really generate anything else for them the rest of the game. So you're talking about Lipsius, Russell, Beck, and Spence go a combined 0 for 13, and they strike out 10 times. And that's hard to handle. When your leadoff guy and then some of your key middle of the spot guys just don't put the ball in play. I mean, I think in the first inning, all they needed was just put a ball in play. They got first and third. Virginia's going to give them a run. They just swapped the double play for a run, but you get a pop up and then 2 strikeouts. And I thought Abbott's circle change was really good. I thought he kept Tennessee off balance all day with that. And you come up in the 5th inning and the 6th inning, and they just don't put the ball in play. And then one inning they did, and then Virginia made 2 really nice defensive plays. I mean, you can't fault the line drive to second. I mean, you hit that ball as hard as you can hit it. It just, the baseball gods sometimes are just not with you. It's what they call Adams. Hit it right at them, and they caught it. And then they had the shortstop shaded towards second base on the little shift on the ground ball that he fielded on the other side of second and threw the runner out in the inning. And that was pretty much Tennessee's last chance. But a lot of empty at-bat, too many strikeouts from key guys in their lineup, and just not being able to put the ball in play and move runners, just to try to that. I don't know if it's a real different game, but if Tennessee gets a run in the first inning there, I think they have a little more confidence, and it might be a little different game. But you get an opportunity to score in the first inning on a guy like that, you have to take advantage of it, and they didn't.
Yeah, and it just kind of snowballed as it went. Well, speaking of which, of snowballing, the strikeouts, my goodness, Barry, you called this one. I got to give you credit. I thought Texas would beat Mississippi State. You did not, and you said the reason was strikeouts. Texas had an issue with making contact all year. State strikes out more hitters than anybody in the country, and my goodness, that's exactly how it played out.
Yeah, I mean, it happened that in game 1, and you say to open the season, you see those numbers, and you think, well, it's going to be different in game, 60 whenever they play again, the first game in the College World Series. But you look at their numbers, and I just didn't see how it was going to be different. Mississippi State and Ole Miss are now tied for first place in the nation with strikeouts after last night's game. Mississippi State punched out 21 last night to set a College World Series record. And now Texas has now struck out 530 times this year on offense. And I just didn't see how that was going to change their strikeout offense. And they were dominated last night by Bednar and Sims, even though they made it interesting in the 9th inning with a little traffic, a home run, and runners on the corners. But, I mean, last night was crazy. With those 2 guys, Bednar struck out everybody in the lineup. He struck out everybody at least twice. The 21 strikeouts for Mississippi State was a College World Series record for one team, and the 32 strikeouts, or the 33 strikeouts combined, was a combined strikeout record. Texas struck out 12, and it was just one of those nights that just was crazy to watch. I mean, it's just everything was a strikeout. Bednar struck out 7 in a row over the first 3 innings. Texas 6 through 9 hitters were 0 for 12 with 10 strikeouts. And Mississippi State's trio of Logan Tanner, Kellum Clark, and Logan Forsythe, they were 0 for 10 with 9 strikeouts. And so it was a strikeout-dominated game. And I just felt like that Mississippi State, if Bednar pitched like he's capable of pitching, that Texas is just a strikeout team, and they had 4 hits, and 3 of them came in the 9th inning, and they punched out 21 times, and they walked once. And I just had a feeling that was a bad matchup for Texas in February, and it was a bad matchup for Texas in June. And I think if they play again, I think it's going to be a bad matchup again, because I just think Mississippi State's power arms are just strong for a team that strikes out a ton, and Texas certainly does that.
How about Landon Sims last night? He's mowing Texas down, then gives up a home run with, I can't remember if it was a leadoff or 1 out, and then gives up a couple of hits. Texas has got runners first and third before I think he gets a ground ball to second to end it. But my goodness, it just seemed like there wasn't going to be any drama. And then there was a little bit more than State probably wanted to have at the very end. But that was just an epic ninth inning, and the way that it played out and the tension as Landon Sims finally got out of that.
Well, he's given up 2 home runs in the postseason now, one to Mike Bianco last night to lead off the ninth to make it 2-1. And, of course, we all remember the home run he gave up to Nico Cavadas last week in the game against Notre Dame that I think has still not landed in Starkville. They did estimate, I saw on a tweet last week that they estimated that ball exit velocity was 116 and it traveled over 500 feet. That's impressive. Even with an aluminum bat, that's impressive. So they get the home run last night. He comes back with a strikeout and a ground out. And then Ivan Melendez and Cam Williams, who were combined 0 for 6 with 5 strikeouts, finds a way to get a couple of hits. And all of a sudden we got first and third and 2 outs and, the winning run on base. And then we get a ground out from Douglas Hodo III to Scotty DeBrule at second base to end the game. And you can just kind of see the relief, for Sims and the relief for Mississippi State as that ending unfolded. And then as it ended and, they were able to win a game. And I know at the moment they were not thinking it. And at the moment I wasn't either, but they finally were able to reverse the curse a little bit, finally beat Texas in Omaha for the first time. And now they're 2-4 all time against Texas in the postseason and 1-2 in Omaha, making up for losses in 79 and 85 that I know this team doesn't have anything to do with or probably think anything of. But for the Mississippi State folks that follow this team and have followed this program for years, that was a big win for them last night, being able to finally beat Texas on the biggest stage. And they did it, and they did it with their power arms. And both of those young men were very impressive last night. And it was, even though there were a ton of strikeouts, it was one of the more entertaining first-round College World Series games that I can remember watching in a long time.
What was Texas doing throwing Pete Hansen in relief? He's their game 2 starter. That's who Tennessee would have had to match up with. I don't know if that takes him out of the mix for starting in that elimination game, but that was just one that had me scratching my head because, my goodness, Texas, it's not like that team lacked for bullpen options.
Yeah, that was kind of interesting. They brought him in, but I think they felt like they could maybe scratch out a run, and that was their best option to hold Mississippi State to 2. I think if it got to 3 or 4, they knew they had no chance. But yeah, that was interesting that they went with him. But we talked about this last week on the show, and it happened with Ole Miss in the Super Regional. It happened with Arkansas in the Super Regional. The NCAA tournament sometimes makes you do things you would not do during the regular season. And I think the coaches that can avoid that, avoid kind of getting off the page a little bit or going to a different book or a different strategy, I think the ones that avoid doing that are the ones that have the most success. It was an interesting move to bring him in, but I'm guessing they felt like he was their best option. It was a strikeout game. They needed a strikeout guy. They're only down 2-0. They figure a bloop and a blast somehow they can, they get back in the game. They got them. They just got them in reverse order. They got the blast and then the bloop. But they had a chance in the ninth, and I guess they felt like that was their best option to hold Mississippi State 2, because I guess they figure, well, if this gets to 3 or 4, we have no chance, and we got to keep them to 2. And I guess they felt like that was their best option to do that.
Barry, we have any closing thoughts before we end today? Of course, we'll be back tomorrow, and we'll talk more about the Monday game, and we'll preview the Tuesday games tomorrow morning. But I'm wondering if there's any loose ends we didn't wrap up today that we should have gotten to.
Well, we talked about the strikeouts. This, 8 games. It's been 101 strikeouts through the first 8 games. I mean, it's a lot of strikeouts. You talk about Texas struck out 21 times. Arizona struck out 19 times against Vanderbilt. Everybody struck out double digits except Virginia and Stanford. Stanford only punched out 9 times against Arizona. Virginia only struck out 5 times against Texas. So a lot of strikeouts out on the table and a high number of home runs. Averaging a home run a game. 9 homers in 8 games, 9 homers in 4 games, 2 home runs a game. I think he hit 7 home runs on Saturday, which was the most on opening day or most on any day in quite some time at TD Ameritrade. So the wind blowing out has been an issue. We've seen a lot of home runs, but we've also seen a lot of strikeouts. And I guess that's where the game is this day now. Day and age is now that you either hit a home run or you strike out. I guess everybody's Dave Kingman from the 70s, but just a lot of strikeouts so far. We've played 4 games. We're averaging 25 strikeouts and 2.3 home runs a game so far in the World Series. We'll see if that continues today and tomorrow as we get into game 2s and we get into the second and third starters and the bullpens.
Well, we'll have it covered for you, all the action from Monday, and of course we'll preview Tuesday's games on Tuesday's podcast. Thank you for listening to the 14 podcast. Remember, we've got plenty of content at our website, southeastern14.com, things that you don't see on the podcast. We'll be updating our previews of the games coming up. Be sure to follow us on Twitter at 14 Southeastern. Subscribe to our podcast wherever you get yours, and please leave us a nice rating and review. That helps us get found. Anyway, I'm Chris Lee, the host of the 14. He's Barry Allen. Thank you for listening. We'll see you again on Tuesday.